I'd like to call the February 25th, 2008 Foxborough School Committee to order. Tonight's agenda includes a visitors section at 7 o'clock, followed by approval of the minutes, Massachusetts Association of School Committees presentation of the Outstanding School Partner Award to Invencis, an update on the preschool early childhood, a Metrolec security audit presentation, a discussion of a vacancy on the school committee for Southeastern Regional Vocational School, discussion of the initial 2008-2009 school calendar, monthly budget, and other matters. Are there any visitors that would like to address the school committee this evening? Seeing none, I would like to move, since we have some guests here tonight, I'll move the minutes to the end of the meeting. And I'd like to turn it over to the superintendent for the recognition.
Great, thank you, Larry. It is with a great deal of pleasure that we recognize one of our terrific partners in the Foxborough Public Schools, and that is Invencis Process Systems. They are being given an award tonight by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. We have Maurice Hancock, past president of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, here, who will make the official and formal presentation. But I wanted to say a few words about our partnership and the type of work that has been going on in the Foxborough Public Schools, because I think it's important and I think it's noteworthy. So I'd like to do that. Before I do that, I'd like to introduce a couple of people from Invencis. John Eva is here tonight, and Sheila Peterson is also here tonight. And then we also have our school to career partners as well, Christine LaChance, the director, and Ellen Pillsbury, who runs our program here in the Foxborough Public Schools and actually has an office right in this area. So we have some great partnerships that it's really terrific tonight to be able to talk about publicly and to be able to honor people. In the school committee's packet, there was a list of, and I'll call it a partial list actually, because Sheila then sent me another list today of all the accomplishments that have gone on over the years with Invencis. And let me just highlight that, and then what I'd like to do then is turn it over to you, Mo, and you can make the official presentation. This is a long-standing partnership. Invencis started with the Foxborough School District in the Palms, which was a math science initiative, a state and federal initiative, and developed initial business partnership model in 1993 and 1994, took part in strategic planning, some of the areas, math science curriculum review, long-range planning committee, foreign language committee, block scheduling evaluation, professional development workshops, course development and implementation, classroom volunteer participation, which we're still hearing more about, student and teacher mentoring in the school and the workplace, an invited speaker on the successful attributes of school business partnerships at the Department of Education and in various university settings. Recently, Invencis has been part of the Strategic Planning Committee. As I just mentioned, the School to Career Partnership brought the Foxborough School District into this in 1995 as part of the logical step after PALMS. Significant partner in winning a $300,000 grant the next year for the Tech Ed Center as a focal point. Then influenced the creation of the School to Career Liaison position, and I mentioned the work that Ellen is doing in that, and we are involved in that partnership along with Attleboro, Norton, and North Attleboro. And then some other activities, the scholarship to graduating senior entering a 4-year program in engineering, computer science, and math, the technical education support, career day sponsorship, that's again ongoing, newspapers in education, school to career programming, and really the list goes on and on, something that Sheila and I talked about just the other day, the women in technology and now students in technology, the engineering course that we started this year at Foxborough High School, the teacher externship program. We've had people that have worked at Invencis over the summer that's been, I think, really valuable for teachers to come back, understand what the workplace looks like, and be able to influence our students. Student job shadows and mentoring, internships, just a host of activities here at the high school. recent involvement in the middle school, helped start the Career Days 12 years ago, and now coordinated and fund it. After-school programs, some primary funding in that area. Mathematics summer camp, Each One Reach One, which is reinvigorated again. I actually remember Each One Reach One when I was teaching here, and it's back, and I think making an important difference. That also goes into the elementary level. PTO in Richmond, playground improvement. We had an activity, Sheila, was that in November, where you had people from Inventus came and they worked at the Borough Playground, they worked out back out here, the Community Day, so those kinds of activities. Just a number of different things. They have, as many people know, they've donated corporate space to house a discretionary fund on Neponset Ave, which is, again, terrific. Fresh Start program serving 90 to 100 students with startup school supplies. Donate space for operations volunteers. They sponsor the Masonic Angel Fund, and all the work that has been going on is just really extensive. So it's very easy for us, and Martha Slattery is not here, but I know she wrote the nomination to nominate Inventus to the Mass Association of School Committees. And I think it was very easy for us to do that, given the long list of accomplishments that Inventus has been involved with the Foxborough Public Schools. So, Mo, why don't I invite you?
While Mo's coming up, let me just say that we have three types of businesses in the community. Those that are in the community, those who, whenever we go and ask for help, are willing to help us. And then we have the Inventus, who, before we go and ask them for help, they figured out a way to help us, and they come to us proactively. And there's no way that we can thank you enough for your support of the students, the teachers, the administration, your kindness, and your proactivity. You don't wait to be asked. You come forward and offer your help, and it's greatly, greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Larry. My name is Morris Hancock, and I am from the city of Brockton, just a neighbor from the east. And I know it's, just to introduce myself briefly here, I'm the past president of the Mass Association of School Committees, and I've been here at Foxborough High a number of times as my son has competed in the MICA Southeastern regional competitions of the jazz bands. And I know Brockton, like Foxborough, we certainly acknowledge and honor our great musicians in our school districts. I want to also first point out that this is a great opportunity, and it's a great thrill for me and an honor to recognize as partners in education. This past year we received a nomination, I'd like to read this, for Inventus Process Systems out of Foxborough from the Foxborough School Committee, and they presented it to the Board of Directors for the Mass Association of School Committees, and we brought it to the Delegate Assembly at our state convention in November, and it was unanimously voted to make this presentation. And just a summary here, this family-owned and operated machinery and tool company has a worldwide reputation for industrial controls. It has been a wonderful community partner to the Foxborough schools for many years. Inventus has made many contributions to help improve the technology capabilities of the school district. Their contributions have been used for state-of-the-art software and equipment in the computer labs. Through its generosity, Foxborough High School will be offering an engineering course, operating a math camp, and have additional support for after-school and summer activities. So certainly it's a great honor and a unique pleasure for the Mass Association of School Committees, so a statewide association, to recognize important, outstanding partners to public education. And I would just like to read the plaque. The Mass Association of School Committees and the Foxborough School Committee are honored to recognize Inventus Process Systems outstanding school partner for its support, commitment, leadership, and sustained efforts to enhance the educational opportunities of our students. 2008, Ellen Furtado, the President.
Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely.
I don't know if you can, there's a microphone there, you can.
Well, I can
Yeah,
stand.
please.
Please sit down first.
John, you're welcome to sit.
Thank you. The Foxborough Company, the words were invented earlier on, but the Foxborough Company celebrates this year 100 years. It starts with a family of brothers who form part of the community in building a company. In the subsequent 100 years, we've had many people from the town, their children, their children's children, and so on, work at the company. Many of those came through the school system, whether it be in the town of Foxborough or in the region. And we know that the only way that we will continue as a company is the next generation of young children. And to us, it's very important that we see that the young children come through the school system. And as an employer, we do have a responsibility, because without those bright young children, we don't have a future. So we look forward to ways that we can help you. And Sheila and I speak because there are three respects that we'll talk to you. One is as parents of children that are in your school system. I have the fortune I've got three in your school system, the high school, the Ahern, and the Taylor.
Excellent.
As a member of the community, I haven't lived here all my life, as you can sense from the accent, but also being a 25-year veteran of the company, only a quarter of its life. And I do sincerely hope that I see my children come through the system, along with their friends, and that they prosper, and that we prosper as a company. So we look forward to your development of women in technology, as we both have daughters. That's a vested interest. Any program that you think of, please don't hesitate to come to us. But most importantly, we look to other companies in the town to also step forward. One makes a difference, but it's like one pebble in the water. We need many more. So if you could, please encourage the other companies that you know to also come forward. And if they don't have ideas, we can come together to form those ideas. We very much appreciate the recognition that we're given, and we treat that as a respect of 100 years of service back to the community, and we look forward to another 100 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming.
Well, not a problem. My dad I'm one of 6 siblings. I'm the only one who did work for the company, so
You could still do that.
I know. But I honestly know what he's doing. Thank you very much. Sheila, you're a great asset. My pleasure.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. With that note, the next item is the preschool early childhood update, Chris.
And I'll have Debbie Spinelli, who oversees this, introduce our guests tonight, who will give us an update about our preschool and early childhood program.
Great, nice to see we have actually a little audience for our update. I'm sure that's what it's here for. We have actually Dr. Ingrid Alati, who's the principal of the Igo School, Cindy Brunelli, who's the special education director, and Diana Parr, who's our early childhood coordinator, are going to do the presentation. So if you would step to the microphone, it's nice to see we have some support from one of our teachers as well. Both.
Yes, we have Kathy Bailey, one of our principal teachers here with us too. I do have a brief summary. I apologize. There's a brief summary coming around that we just wanted to talk a little bit about the status of our current integrated preschool program and some recommendations for changes that we'd like to put forward for next year. As you know, the preschool is housed at the IGO school, and over the past few years has been a program that has grown significantly. At the current time, we have approximately 105 students in our preschool, and over half of these students are currently receiving services through special education, about 54%. Another change that we've seen over the past years is that the students that are currently entering are coming in with more significant needs. Many of our students receive not only extensive educational services, but also receive related services, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech and language therapies. Each of our preschool programs is staffed with a lead teacher as well as 2 educational assistants. And the full range of services are provided by various therapists, both inside and out of the classroom. One of the challenges that we faced in our preschool program, and I'll certainly let other people jump in and speak to it, but the current schedule that we have, we run a 5 full-day program. We offer sessions, morning preschool sessions and afternoon preschool sessions, and then we have one program that meets 5 days a week, full day. One of the challenges with that schedule is that unlike other classroom teachers, our preschool students don't attend specials. So the teachers do not have a designated prep time throughout the course of the day. In addition to that, over time, more of our children actually stay through the lunch break between sessions so that they can have some structured social opportunities. And many of our kids are working on feeding programs, expanding the repertoire of foods that they will experiment with. So the lunch block is actually, we have students almost every day for the lunch hour as well. So the challenge that creates is that it's really difficult for the lead teacher to have an opportunity to have consultation time with the various therapists working in the classroom, as well as to find time to have regular ongoing communication with the assistants that also work within the program. Additionally, if there's team meetings that need to happen or home visits or site visits, we bring a sub in to release the teacher to go and do those different kinds of things. So that's been a challenge, and our recommendation in order to really strengthen our program and have better cohesiveness within the program and offer more consultation, collaboration, we also really want to work on extending and expanding that homeschool partnership, so to have opportunities for parents to come in for regular meetings with the teachers as well as consult visits. What we'd like to do is transition from a 5 full-day program to a 4.5-day program. What that would mean effectively is that in the afternoon we offer 2-day sessions and a 3-day session. What we'd offer is just two-day sessions, and there'd be a half-day a week where there are not students present. During that half-day, the teachers would have their consult time. They would meet with other team members. They would meet with parents and families. They would do their home visits. They would run their IEP team meetings. There are a few things that are impacted by that transition. One would be there is a minimal cost impact. We would have approximately 16 tuition-based students that would go from a 3-day to a 2-day session, and the cost would be about $5,920 in lost tuition revenue. I do think that it's highly likely the district will make up some of that cost in the decreased amount of substitutes you have to hire to cover the team meetings and things like that. I don't have an exact figure for that, but I think that would be an offset. As far as student impact, we would have 5 students in our preschool program currently who either attend the 5 full-day program or 5 afternoons. So there would be 5 students whose program would decrease by 3 hours a week in the fall. At the same time, those families would have access to services they don't currently have, such as the collaboration, the consult, the home visits. In looking at this recommendation, we also did a comparison of the other Hockomock League communities. Of all the schools that we spoke with, about 80% currently run a 4.5-day program. A few of the larger districts, like Franklin, they run on all 5 days, but they have 220 students in their program and have no other way to get that many kids, served. But the majority do run 4.5-day programs and use that additional half day the same way we're proposing for team meetings and home visits and consultation time. Okay, anything that I left out?
I think you covered most of it. I just would like to stress the importance of the fact that our preschool team are really hardworking teachers who deal with some really significant needs that seem to be growing yearly. And I think the way that staff learns the best is from each other, and we are in a position where we can't really support that or offer that to our most needy population. And so I really do support the fact that it's a necessary piece of the preschool program that is missing at this point that can only strengthen the program.
What has been the reaction of the parents that you talked to?
Well, as I said, the change would really impact 5 students out of the 105. It's a lottery every year, and people don't know until we draw the lottery names what their child would be offered, what slots would be available. So we would be offering, instead of a 3-day program, it would be a 2-day program. But those students haven't been selected via the lottery. The lottery's coming up in the middle of March.
Right, but have you reached out to parents to get their reaction to the program?
In terms of
Just in general,
changes?
because it could be their child that wins the lottery, it doesn't win the lottery, so I'm just curious as to what community outreach we've had with the parents of these children, or the children that will be there next year, as an example.
We haven't had conversations with the children that would be impacted at this point by transitioning from a 5 to a 4.5 day. As I said, that would be the next step in our process. Once we make the decision if we're going to transition, then we would work with those families around what the change in the program would look like and what other resources and supports they would be able to access at this point. But for the majority of the preschool population, it will not indicate any kind of a shift, because half the kids coming in go into a 2-day program, and now instead of offering 3-day, it would be comparable for all students that would be drawn in the lottery.
And I think in terms of the 5 students that we talked about that will be losing that 3 hours, some of that time would be made up in terms of consultation, home school communication,
Home visits.
Home-based services.
and a carryover of strategies used in the classroom. Families are always looking for that extra piece of how can we do that at home, and that extra time without the children would really support that homeschool connection for those families.
Would you make sure that the schedule is not a rotating type schedule, because a lot of people
Yeah,
count on
no, it would be a set day,
I
like
wouldn't want
Wednesday
people
afternoon.
switching it, so
Yeah.
it would be a set.
Correct.
It would be a set day, yeah.
No, something they could plan on.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think one of, two things that I think are important about this, and I really appreciate Ingrid and Cindy coming to me with this about a month and a half ago, and I asked you to do more research, which you've done, so I appreciate that. But at this age level, at the 3 and 4 year level, the interaction with parents is a key. And if we're not able to do that, or if we have to bring in a substitute to be able to do that, it doesn't create that kind of relationship that I think is important going forward. I mean, this is really setting the stage for these students to be with us for a long period of time, and for them to be able to create those relationships with parents, and to be able, as both Diana and Cindy just said, to advise them about how they work with their students, is, I think, a key to this.
Yeah.
I agree with you that most of the districts where I've worked, have a 4.5 day program, because they want to make sure that teachers work together, but also reach out to families. And I think the way we structure this, I think does have just a real minimal impact. I mean, we know that the 4-year-olds, for the most part, are going on to kindergarten next year. So you have another group that will already be transitioning out, and you'll be bringing in the 3-year-olds. And as we start to make these decisions, the other thing that I probably should have set the stage for this earlier is I asked them to come so that they could start this discussion and then decide what other areas do we really need to delve into. I think we've gotten a good kind of baseline approach to this right now, and some real solid recommendations. So I really appreciate that.
I think probably coming from the setting that I come from, I can appreciate what you're trying to do, because there are only so many hours in the day to try and handle phone calls and trying to deal with what you have right in front of you. And you need some downtime. You need that allotted time to be able to handle everything else you have to handle. And you can't do it when you have a classroom full of students or small children. So you need to be able to offset it somehow, and I think this is a very practical way to do it.
I think another
also-
advantage.
I was going to say, I think also that there's a critical window of development for young children. And when we're talking about some of our more significantly involved children that are receiving multiple therapies, it's really critical for those service providers to be working on the same goals and to be communicating. If you're working on promoting language acquisition, the physical therapist can do that in their sessions as well as can the occupational therapist if they have a chance to dialogue and share strategies. And when you have a program like we do where a therapist comes in, takes the child, goes out, works, brings them back to the classroom, there isn't that continuity of dialogue that really can improve the quality of program for the kids. So I think that's another piece we're really hoping to achieve with that. As far as the outreach to the families, I think one of the things that, once we make the decision and move in a different direction, the thing that we hear most often, particularly for our kids that are coming from early intervention with significant services already in place, is that families feel that a big shift from early intervention to public education, because early intervention happens in the household. So parents watch the sessions, they watch the therapists work with their kids, and they feel really comfortable about how to carry that over, because you really need to be working all day with kids on language development. And they feel a big loss when kids come to school. All the therapies and everything happens, and they're not part of it. And so by providing that opportunity for weekly visits and for ongoing consult with families, I think we're really responding to a need that we've heard pretty strongly over the past several years.
Well, they lose their safety net. They're
Exactly.
used to you being
Yeah.
there. They're used to the continuity. And when you pull it away, they lose a little bit of control. So this is one way of getting it back and helping them more.
And it doesn't always work to bring a parent in when the children are there, because children behave differently when their parents are present. So we're trying to respond to that need as well as strengthening our program from a professional perspective as a collaboration.
I think you've identified what you need to do to make it a better program.
I think another advantage with regard to freeing up the teachers on that half day is to work closely with the ed assistants, because I think sometimes we just kind of assume through osmosis that they're going to get the piece of therapy or the training that they need, when in fact they need time. They need to be able to collaborate with the teacher and to be able to learn the new processes and the new strategies. And so this will afford the lead teachers the opportunity to actually share that information with the people that they work with every day.
Katie, any questions?
No, I'd like to hear about the feedback from the families, particularly those families who don't go through the lottery. Are they, you talk about specifically the children who come from the early intervention program.
Their programs won't change because we would still have 4.5 days. We looked at
Right.
all the children that are currently coming 5 days, and it would only be 5 kids that we're anticipating whose
Right.
program would change. But anybody else coming from early intervention that we know about would be afforded the program they currently have.
But you haven't spoken to those families, those 5?
We have not spoken to those 5 families yet.
So they may need, in particular, some support
Yep.
if there's going to be a change in that.
Yeah.
One thing that might be just a suggestion to think through is before you come to us with something like this, and those parents maybe hear it on TV or read it in the newspaper, it might be easier if you had the opportunity to have a discussion with them first, just to get their input, even if it's just to give them a heads up so they're not surprised when they see it on television. It's a little extra step, but it shows. You take so much care throughout the entire school day with all of our students, and I think if we could just take that extra step with the parents in a case like this, it would probably go a long way as well, where they would feel that we've really had an outreach to them. It may not change your decision, it may not change your input, but I think it would be more respectful for them if we could just take that extra step and do that. But it sounds like you've thought through all the ramifications, and you're almost there. Kate, did you want to have any questions?
No, I agree with your comment, Larry, and also Katie. I think to hear from the parents, this sounds great because you're telling us this is the best way moving forward to strengthen this program, and it's comparable to other schools. But I'm also concerned, how will the parents perceive it? And are we going to market it in such a way so that they do understand this is really to strengthen our program? And we have, the 105 students, more than half are special ed, and they need to be serviced, and we're making a case that we can better do that. But remember, the beauty of this is that many parents also look to us for preschool education because they think it's a premium and they're not looking for special ed services. So I would like to make sure that the marketing we do shows how the program will be strengthened for both special needs and non-special needs students. And I'm sorry.
No, I just I think that's a really good point that everybody's made, but I think the one thing that we have to all keep our minds on is that without that designated time, there are 102 students, all of which have needs, whether they're special education students or whether they're not. And if there's not a designated time to perform all those functions that need to happen, they happen with the sacrifice of interrupting the school day for the preschool kids. So that's part of the challenge, is how do you provide all that consultation time, whether it's between the professionals or with the parents, when you've got kids in front of you.
Right.
So it'll actually allow the time spent in the preschool classroom to be a little bit more focused on the children rather than on the different issues that are going on with these kids. And they are very, very young, and there are usually, on any given day, a few things that are happening.
Yeah, I don't think anyone is opposed to the phenomenal idea and the innovative thinking. I think what we're saying is that at times, we're so busy trying to fix problems, and we're so busy trying to make things better, that we don't always bring into the circle all of those that will be impacted. And so to have a conversation with the 105, or the parents to these students, to explain to them the way the current program is structured, how we think changing it would benefit not only the 5, but as you said, all of the students. Having that kind of a discussion, it helps build the relationship between the schools and the community and builds the support. So I don't hear anybody opposed to the thought or opposed to the idea. We're just asking that in the future we take that one extra step. And I know you're going to do it afterwards, but I think it would be easier if those folks heard it directly from you before they heard it on cable or read it in the newspaper, that's all. And their input is valuable, and it might help change your mind 1 degree or 5 degrees before you come in and you have a chance to chat with us. And it might also, by having them aware of it, they might come to the meeting when you're going to present, and they might say, we really support this, there's 12 parents here, we really support it, or we have some concerns. Where with them not knowing it was going to be on the agenda, they didn't have that opportunity. So please don't take it as criticism. It's not meant as criticism, it's just meant as how we can do things just a little bit different.
Because I think how we discuss things, how we communicate things are in fact part of our marketing plan, and I think that's what we need to concern ourselves with, how well we communicate.
Well, one of the things we did this year, Sheila, is the school committee established written goals and objectives for itself, which they've never done before. And one of those key things that we're measuring our performance on is communication skills. So that's why this becomes an important discussion in lots of things we're doing. The item after this, a whole session on security, an update on that, a way to communicate to the public what we're doing to the extent that we can, so that we build their confidence that we're doing the right things, we're listening to what has to be done, and we're taking the right steps. So it's just all part of our goals and objectives, and certainly his goals and objectives as well. And I'm sure what he has flows its way all the way down to all of you as well.
Larry, I just throw my 2 cents in again. I agree with what you're saying, and I think the other piece of that is just being sensitive, and with the presentation, just being sensitive that sometimes when parents hear that something is being taken away in terms of the number of hours that their child might be able to benefit from, or that will benefit from, I think it just has to really be clearly spelled out again in a different form, like Larry's saying, and you've done that tonight. But I just think we need to be sensitive to that because, parents, they're going to be worrying about their particular child and how this is going to impact them. So.
Yeah, we'll certainly follow up with anyone that would be impacted and make sure that it's well explained prior to the lottery, too. That's what we hope to.
Right. And plus, the program has such a wonderful reputation.
Yeah.
My children went through it. And I think that people talk to each other. So they, those who are coming up will say, oh, there's this program here. And they're already have in their mind how many days and what might be available. So just to keep that in mind, too, even though there'll be a new set of students coming through, that the program has such a wonderful reputation. So.
And I want to commend you for your innovative thinking. I know that not just the 3 of you, but across our district, we have administrators and we have teachers looking at everything we do and asking why, so what, how come, how can we do it differently, who's doing it differently. And it's that kind of willingness to question what we do that's going to help us get to where we want to be. And I know sometimes it's hard to question the way we do things, and sometimes you come up with a new idea and someone can criticize you, why didn't you do it last year or the year before? So the courage to come forward on a regular basis with new ideas is very much appreciated by this community, and I want to thank all of you. Right, Chris?
Yeah, one of the things that, just so that people are aware, because I know it's leaked out a little bit, we've had many discussions in a very general way about how do we use space, how do we use our classroom space and all of that. And one of the areas that's come up is preschool program. Is it best housed at the Igo Elementary School? So we've been having that discussion, and I know that some people have said, well, is it moving yet? Well, we don't know yet. I haven't even had a chance to look at some other space, but there may be better space in the district in terms of safety and security and getting kids in and out of spaces. You know, that area on Carpenter and South Street is not the least populated area in our town. So we're really looking at that. So I want to get that on the table as well, that we're really analyzing in the spirit of what you said, Larry, in terms of is this the best place for that program, just in terms of the fiscal needs that we might see. So we're going to spend some time over the next few weeks on that too.
Thank you so much.
Right, thank you.
All right, the next item on our agenda, for those that have been following our meetings, we've been talking about the overall security in our buildings and overall security of our students over the last 6 or 7 months, and we've had a number of updates. We went to an outside group to come in and perform an independent audit and give us suggestions. And tonight is a further update in a series of continued updates on security within our schools. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, and I think the community, we had a chance, the administrative group, and I'm glad to see Bert Delaney and Joe Heinrich are two assistant principals here at Foxborough High School, because they've been working closely with our police officers. But this did start last summer when Chief O'Leary, who's here tonight and is going to do the introductions, came and talked to, I think it was Paul Jackson and me, to say that there's an opportunity here to really take a look at your buildings and with a real state-of-the-art approach to how we do that. And without taking any more of that away from and explaining it, because they have an extensive presentation to make, I'll just introduce Chief O'Leary, and Ed, thank you very much for initiating that with us.
You're very welcome, Dr. Manis. Tonight is the fruition of several discussions that we actually had here with committee members about ways that we could enhance our capabilities should we have a critical incident in any of our school buildings. We targeted initially both the high school as well as the Ahern School because of what we perceived as facilities that might have greater risk because of a different demographic that is in the building. That's not to say that at some future time in conversations with Dr. Martis that we might be looking at doing something similar for our elementary buildings. It's always good to have partners. We heard a nice presentation about Inventus, and they have been town's partners for over 100 years. And likewise, the Foxborough Police is dependent on partnerships. And we're very fortunate that we've developed the Metropolitan Law Enforcement Council that provides a wide variety of services that individually our department couldn't offer the community. And about 15 months ago, one of the programs that was put out to the membership, there are about 46 communities that are involved in the MetroLEC, was to have somebody come in and do an assessment of our school buildings and develop response plans should an incident happen. And I like to think that living in Foxborough, we would never be faced with any challenges. However, it seems like in our news stories, frequently college campuses and high school campuses do have situations that call out for some intensive policing. In fact, earlier this summer, or last summer, we trained many of our staff members so that if we did have some type of incident, members of our department on duty could make some initial steps to mitigate whatever type of problem was going on in the building. I'd like to mention the team members that participated in this, and Sergeant Brennan, that is sort of the team leader, is going to make the actual presentation, but we have Detective Baker from the Franklin Police, as well as 2 members of my staff that are very active in the special weapons section of the Metrolec, Officer Scott Hodson and Officer John Chamberlain. Both have spent a lot of time, and I'd also like to commend Michael O'Leary of the school department for the effort that he put in supporting them when they were doing their program. So I'd like to just turn it over now to Jay Brennan, and he'll explain the results of their activity.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you. Just got a few things to start up.
We'll just need to make sure that they can hear you at home.
Okay.
So we generally ask people to sit there by the microphone. If you feel more comfortable standing, we'll just need to ask the chief to check in the back room to make sure they can hear.
Okay.
All right.
Chris is just going to go through an early introduction of where we came from and how this all came about, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the program itself.
All right, great.
Good evening, folks. Chris Baker from Franklin PD. Basically, how this all evolved, like the chief was explaining, the makeup of Metro. One of the components of Metro LEC is the Metro SWAT team, which myself and Jay Brennan are the operations commanders, and the 2 gentlemen on either side of me, they're element leaders that run different sections of the team as well. We received most of our training, and especially in the last probably 7 or 8 years, exclusively from LAPD, from the LAPD SWAT team, and in the kind of tactical police circles, they're kind of revered for what they do and kind of on point as far as their tactics go. So they've reshaped the way we've kind of, our police philosophies on how we handle critical incidents and various problems. And it's kind of slowed down our process and slowed down our decision making and kind of make us think outside of the box. So with that being said, we started, all of us, we sit down, we watch these events unfold on the news, and we started to think, how could we manage this type of event a little bit easier, if you can imagine such a thing. And what we came up with is that when an incident like this occurs in a school, there are a couple things we have no control over, who it is and where they are in the school. But everything else involved in the school we can kind of manage. We can come up with police rally points where initially all the police we respond to, as opposed to just responding in and around the school. So they will go to a centralized location. They'll meet up with the incident commander, giving clear direction on where they have to go. What problems are there in the school. Where the active shooter might be in the school or where the injured might be. So that's a big piece of this, is coordinating where the police officers go in the event something like this happens. Another portion might be where the fire engines show up, or the different fire rally points around the school. So we kind of just basically looked at every building, and we came in and looked at the elementary school, and we looked at the Foxborough High School, and we kind of figured out a response plan and where all of those different components will end up coming in the event there was ever an emergency at the school, and hopefully there never would be. But again, we couldn't do it without the help of you folks and some of the maintenance folks who knows the ins and outs of the whole place. And when we ask them a question, they're right there, and they could give us all, point us in the right direction. The school has, I'll just keep on kind of rambling here for a minute until Jay gets this up and running. Hopefully it'll be pretty soon. Actually, yeah, you could probably just walk us through the 4 or 5 tiers. And what you'll see is that we'll give you a short, like an 8-slide presentation on what the program is, and then we'll actually show you portions of the Foxborough High School, the plan that's been completed. And I just have to say that, and we just gave this, we did this to the Franklin High School, and we've been over to Norfolk to their schools as well. And there's certain parts of this program when we show you the Foxborough High School that we won't get in detail or in depth, but we can kind of give you an overview of what the plan would be. For obvious reasons, we want too much information out there,
We'll go through the PowerPoint here now. We'll talk about if there are any questions or anything like that, certainly feel free to jump right in. We don't have any real agenda here as far. We just want to make sure that everybody understands the steps and how the progression kind of went along as we developed the program. Like Chris is saying, we recognize that there is a a definite gap between the response, between maybe the school, the fire, the police, and everybody who's involved comes with good intentions to the table, but what we found was there was no central, or there was no one direction we were all taking. We were all coming to the table with our own agenda, and everybody was trying to, again, in good faith, do the right thing, but we weren't all necessarily going about it in a orderly fashion or in this type of environment where things are so time sensitive. It needs to happen quickly, concisely, and there can't be a lot of decision making going on at the time of the incident. So, having said that, we took everything that we could collectively come up with that we have found with our experience over the years to be problems or things that we've always needed and never had when these type of critical incidents happen. As Chris mentioned, we've had a lot of training. We're fortunate here in Foxborough we have officers of this caliber here who have this type of training, but not always available. The things that we need very often, the tools that we need to get this done in the way that we like to have it done, in the safest, quickest fashion, it isn't always available. So what we did was we started to gather up all the information that we could possibly find, that we could plan ahead of time and put into one program, using the help of the school, the police, the fire, and putting everybody together on the same page. This is the goals here, which is what we've been talking about. The next section here, we identified some of the logistical concerns. It's a little bit dim on the board, but basically what we have here is just some definitions or some bulleted information as to what it is we were looking to identify. And some of those things, as Chris will probably jump in here, things like student rally points, police rally points, hasty areas where we can, around the immediate location that we can house your students should we need to send or move bodies quickly to certain areas while the incident is still ongoing. Staging areas, fire, parent, student, same type of situation, a place where we need to house them, but it's a more permanent location with facilities and resources there to help coordinate the efforts while they're there. Where the rally points are very hasty, they're points that we can use for the initial part of the very, very, very early parts of the incident because we have a lot of chaos. The staging areas are more the central locations where we're going to have the parents go to one location, the students go to another location, and then at some point in the very near future we start to marry them up. We don't want that to happen at the same time because that mingling really can affect the accountability, and that becomes a serious issue for the school, and that's what we found to be a problem. Not as much an issue for the police, but certainly an issue for the school, not knowing where all of our students are and whether the parents have actually picked up their kids or whether their kid is off injured, whether their kid wandered off and is in a daze. And so these staging areas give us the ability to not only deal with students, but parents, the police also, and any other resource that's coming. Staging areas are very important because we also need to be accountable for all of our resources, as well as does the fire, EMS, and any of those type of personnel. They all have accountability issues, and not having assigned locations really leads into a serious problem for us, because what we find is if we don't have a place to send everybody, everybody ends up kind of mixed together, and that really becomes counterproductive for us.
So just to cut in real quick, these 8 locations that we have up there, these aren't really nice to have locations, they need to have locations, and if an incident were to ever happen in a school system, those would be implemented. Now, you're going to ask a person, an incident commander, a police chief, or lieutenant, or whatnot, to manage the incident that's going on in the school, and then also come up with this stuff. And I got to tell you, that would probably be, and we go to critical incidents all the time, and the first half an hour, 45 minutes is complete chaos. So what we've tried to do is take as much chaos as we can out of it, because this is stuff that we can, in a calm setting like this, discuss. These are some of the best places that we have, and okay, now we can implement it. So if it were ever to happen, we could jump right off and just deal with these things.
We also identified some other key points that we thought, and there are more, you'll see them as we go through this, things like the incident command post. It's sometimes not thought about ahead of time, but it's an important thing because everybody in this room or in this environment, hey, you folks all have a say or you all have a seat at the table. It's just where's that table going to be? And we needed to identify that because we want the fire chief, we want the police chief, we want the superintendents, we want everybody who has something important to bring to the table to be all together so that those decisions can be made based upon all the information, not just what the police know, what the fire know, what the school know independently. So again, the incident command post is just another one of those type of locations. Media, another friend of ours, we always need to involve them because they are going to be an important part of these incidents. And if we give them a place to go, we found in the past they're very helpful in that regard. They will go where they're asked to go, provided they know that we're going to give them some information. They need their story. They want to help us. So if we can give them a place to go, it's been very helpful. So we put that into this, knowing that could be a problem for us. You're going to hear some different things tonight as we go through this, things like site data. And site data is all the information about all the buildings, floor plans, contact information, basically everything about your building that logistically we might need to know. How the utilities work, where the utilities are located, how do we do this, how do we do that, do you have cameras, do your doors have locking devices, do you have communication throughout the building. All of that type of information is gathered in the site data section. The photography and satellite imagery with the virtual images and still images are all of the staging areas, all of the rally points, everything that we gathered, all the mapping that we gathered around your school, so that we could not only say where it is, we can show where it is. People like to see things a lot of times that work better, so we're able to put that right out there for everyone to see involved here, and we'll show you as we get into the tiers, the different sections of this program, how that all works into it. Chris?
No, I'm good.
The why section is somewhat rhetorical. I think everybody in this room at this level understands the importance for this. We continually see it again, as the chief mentioned, colleges, schools, high schools, even children in younger programs. They're always at risk. They're very vulnerable, and we feel that it's a really important thing that we have a plan in place to help deal with these problems. Even though very infrequently, when they do happen, it's a terrible tragedy, and to not have a plan in place, we felt would be remiss. The content of the program itself, it's broken into 5 tiers, or 5 sections. Each section complements the other. They all kind of work together to help develop the whole package as it is. The first tier here we'll see in a little bit. It's an interactive CD-ROM program which can be run from any PC. It's a CD you can put into any laptop, PC, or whatever. And the program self-loads itself up onto the computer, and it gives you access to everything that, Chris, I think you have the book. Do you have the book?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go get it.
It's in the corporate room. It's a redundant copy of the manual itself. Everything that's in the manual is on the CD-ROM. So if this happened to be, let's say, the command post, and we were all working on the incident, we have an interactive CD-ROM program that we can actually run through all the different mapping, contact information, any floor plans, utilities, and the other section that we've also thrown in, we've put a lot of time into working up virtual images. We went around all of your locations that we did, and we took virtual images of both the inside and outside of your school, especially high priority areas. And we're not going to discuss a lot of that. We'll show you some examples. We're not going to show the ones of, if you'd like to see them at some point, we can show them to you on the laptop, but for security purposes, we're not going to show the interiors. We'll show you the exteriors because they're planes, anybody could walk by and see. But the interiors, we'll be more than happy to show you off camera. We just have a couple of examples we can show. I'll bring them up when we get to the CD portion of the program itself. The second section of this, I think Chris has now. I think he grabbed it.
This is just a demo book. It's not Foxborough School because we want you guys to look at the plan first and understand it. And once you say, all right, go ahead and print it, then we'll get 5 copies. But that will kind of give you an overview of what the program or what the book would look like.
The second portion, which is what we're starting to pass around now, we call the Commander's Manual, really is just a paper version of the CD program, less the virtual images. And what it gives you, as you'll see, is all the mapping and everything we could conceivably come up with that we would need to help plan this incident. Anything that we would need as far as contact information, floor plans, utility information, exterior mapping. It's all put into that book there. Nice, neat package so that it's readily accessible at the time of the incident, should we need it. The third component, which Chris will probably take you through just a little bit. We won't go through the whole thing. It's a little bit long, but we'll get you through some of it. Is the School Violence Response Program Field Guide. It's really a flip chart, a flow chart for people to follow in the moment of crisis or in the moment of need. A lot of times we just need to get the fire lit a little bit the incident's happening, it's suddenly been handed to me as a shift supervisor, as a supervisor. I now have to come to your school and deal with a very, very dynamic and difficult situation. The question inevitably is going to be, where do I start? And what we did was we took the guesswork out of it. We make a step-by-step, I believe it's an 11-step program or 11-step flip chart that really all you need to do is grab this, open to the first page, and I think Chris can take you, or at least hand it around to you, take you through each individual step of the program, and by the time you get to the end of it, at that point we felt pretty comfortable that there would be help on scene, and now we could start to really expand this and really turn this into a full-blown operation where we could have all the resources at hand that we would need.
And just an example of that, it's laminated for a reason, and I'll get to that in a second, but like Jay said, it's step by step. Go ahead and grab the guide. Step 2, if you're the incident commander, what do I do next? Let me call the local response. Let me get the local police coming, the local fire departments coming from all the area towns. Call the regional SWAT team that would come to help assist in something like that. And again, what we're trying to do is make it as easy as we can on the person running the incident, so he doesn't really have to think. That if there was ever a curveball thrown to the person running the show, then he can actually spend time on the curveball, but he won't forget about calling in mutual aid for police and fire and all those other things. There are different teams that we send into the buildings. We send, as police officers arrive, we immediately send folks in there to deal with the problem or the threat at hand, and then we send another group of officers in there that would be to administer any type of first aid or rescue the people. But one of the things that we're going to have to do is accountability. So when we send folks into the building, we want to know, what police officers we sent in, what their names are, who they were. So step 3 would be just that, creating the officers, the teams of officers that go inside of the building. But as they go in, we also need to write those names down and keep a ledger of it. So if I was the sergeant that showed up on scene and I sent in 3 or 4 groups of officers, and then my lieutenant showed up and he says, where are we now? I could just take the book and I could say, we're at step 3, Lieutenant. These are all the resources that we have dispatched to the building right now, and these are the following steps that need to occur. And then finally, I just flip through to highlight the out-of-town resources, like myself from Franklin. If I hadn't been around Foxborough School, I probably wouldn't know the area. I mean, I still don't know it super well, but if somebody told me to go and perform a traffic diversion, at one of your streets, I wouldn't know how to get there. So what we've done is when you go to a traffic diversion point to start a roadblock, I'd show up and the sergeant might say, what's your name? I tell him what my name is, he'd write it down, he'd tell me the traffic control point that he wants me to go to, he'd then flip open the map, and then these all detach. So we would hand you a sheet that would look like this, and all the information I have the police department's telephone number, I have all the staging areas and addresses for the parents, for the students, I know where the media is going to be, so if anybody in the middle of the roadblock that I have up, if anybody would ask me any question about the incident, I could direct them. As an out-of-town Franklin officer, I could say, yeah, go here, or yeah, here's a telephone number here, and then we also attach a map on the back that kind of gives us a feel of the area. So I'm a map person. If I look at the directions, I need something more visual to learn from. So we kind of made this guide kind of foolproof. And again, we built it on the incident, kind of basing it on how many officers would show up. We know in the first 5 to 10 minutes, all of Foxborough would be India School. And then the next 10 or 15 minutes, you'd start to have Norfolk and Rentham and Franklin and Plainville. They start to arrive until we get such a time that, at this point in time, it might be time for a traffic diversion because we know we probably have 30, 40 police officers arriving on scene. And then one other thing, as far as the teams that get dispatched to the school, again, I'm not from Foxborough, but if I ever got sent into Foxborough High School, the one thing, and they told me to go to, H Wing or whatever the case would be, I wouldn't know how to go there. I wouldn't know how to get from the police rally point, and I wouldn't know where that is in the building. So what we've done is we've taken maps of the school, and we've made these small mini type of maps. And on the back, again, it has the location that we would be at, which would be a student rally, the police rally point, and they'd say, hey, go into H Wing. So I'd turn over, I could see where H Wing is, and they say, go to the computer lab. There's the computer lab. This is where I want to go. And on the way in there, if I ever got dispatched to somewhere else, I could simply just refer to my map, and now I can navigate in the Foxborough school system, or in the high school, and so can all the rest of the police officers. And what they do is they simply will be out of their way, they wear it around their neck, and if they needed to, go rescue a person here or provide, an escort from this area, they can navigate around the school. So you should take great comfort, in my opinion, in first of all, you guys being forward-thinking and jumping on the bandwagon to have a program such as this. again, with the Foxborough PD, Bert Delaney, who was, super helpful. He really, put the spark to the whole thing, to get a kind of a plan like this in place. Because, some schools, they don't have them, maybe, and hopefully they will, they'll be on point like you folks.
Well, it's funny because 6 months ago, the school committee felt as though we had I'll call it a crisis management skeleton, but that the plan was not as comprehensive as it needed to be. And it sounds like you've addressed many of the concerns that each of us had, such as when the police come and when parents are coming, and you've got together a plan which I presume we will test on a periodic basis, and we'll make sure as new police and fire are hired in town, et cetera. But this is it sounds all the things that we thought were missing 6-8 months ago. It seems like that you folks have done a marvelous job of addressing that and putting into place a very structured program that not only our local police and fire, but assistance from wherever would be helpful. Plus, all of our teachers, administrators, et cetera, appear to be part of this as well, so that with the right ongoing communication, the right ongoing monitoring, this could put us in very good shape in the event we have a crisis that we need to deal with.
I agree with you, and I think one of the things from sitting in the audience tonight, listening to you folks, is the partnerships that you've developed with the businesses and the kind of team approach that you've had. And it's no surprise because, like I said, from your custodial staff to Bert from the police department, for us to be able to come in from other communities and just be a part of the team to get it done, you don't get that cooperation everywhere. We certainly got it here in Foxborough. There's just a couple more things we'll go over.
The last section is the section actually that you just mentioned. There's a continuing education and consulting portion of this, which we work with the local PD school committee. Really, anybody who wants to be involved, we run tabletop exercises and things like that. We review the school's lockdown procedure if they choose to have that done, which, as the chief may or may not have mentioned at some point, we take what you have and implement it into the program. Again, the partnership with the schools, we're not here to tell you how to run your schools, we're just here to try to put together a plan that we can all collectively use. So we took the lockdown procedures that are in place, review them. If there are any glaring deficiencies, obviously bring it to the attention of the people who need to know, and more than likely those things change. But more likely than not, it's just taking what you already have and putting it somewhere where everybody has access to it is essentially what it is. And the educational consulting portion is what we're doing tonight, to put it out to everybody so there's some peace of mind that people do know that there is in fact a plan in place. And the tabletop exercises that we work with the police departments, and we involve the school committee and the schools and anybody else who wants to be involved. We've done them, and as Chris mentioned, we've done quite a few of these programs now for local, for public schools, the private sector, and I'd have to say Foxborough has been one of the most cooperating and accommodating school systems as far as its ability to get everybody to work collectively with us. I can't think of a time where we called that over and said, hey, we need to get over to take some pictures, or we need to get over. And I know Bert came out a couple of times with us. I'm sure it was at night, so I'm sure it's not during his. And took us around the schools and did whatever he needed to do.
That's his
very
normal work.
accommodating.
That's his normal work day.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be looking for something tomorrow.
They all on their own time committed to helping out, which is what I'm for.
Now, Chris, are you planning on the tabletop exercises?
Yes, yeah, we've just started.
Those are very valuable.
And Debbie has been involved. She's put together the team recently. So that's kind of our next step in this, along with.
What I'm going to pull up is the actual CD-ROM program of Foxborough High School. We'll show you anything and everything that we can, and if there are any questions, you want to see anything else, if I move too quickly, certainly grab me, and we'll take a look at a few things. But basically how the program breaks out, as far as the CD portion goes, is it gives you a lot of options of different things that you can look at should you want to go in and see things. Maybe a little difficult to see. It's not really designed to go up on this. What you see here now is what you saw a lot of in the book with all the mapping. Staging areas, the media staging area. Where they are here in Foxborough, Town Hall, media staging area. Parent staging area, where we're going to send all your parents. Parents we're going to ask to go, and then we show where the high school is in respect to that. Foxborough Plaza. And all these things are worked out with the school, with the police departments, and anybody else who this would be relevant to. The student staging area, things like that. Yeah, rally points, and we mentioned rally points are some hasty locations. You can see they're much closer to the actual location, and they're strategically set at points around the location we feel that we can get, as people are either leaving or if they are trying to get away from it, we can kind of hit them in almost every angle. Sooner or later, they're going to run into one of the spots where we want them to go, with just a little bit of direction.
Now, will there be a plan to communicate to parents as well, so that long before a crisis happens, although they probably won't remember, but again, as part of our ongoing communication, whether it be through the student handbook or other vehicles, to educate parents?
That way they'll know where to go
Right.
Yeah.
beforehand, like last time during the school lockdowns. I think you had all the parents showing up at the base of the school. Really showed there was kind of a mess down there. So now they'll know where there'll be a police officer there to brief them and explain to them.
One of the most important things, I mean, this is so impressive when we went to see what the work they'd already done. But the most important point is that we can't be making decisions in the moment of the crisis about procedures.
Yeah.
We have to have those outlined ahead of time. And we're not quite there yet here. So I think one of the things I really appreciate about what they did is we've got the benefit of people who are experts in security and in crisis management to tell us where the best locations are rather than have us try to figure it out and maybe we'd be right and maybe we'd be wrong. So I think that preparedness aspect of crisis management is probably the most important.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of schools work on the response, but they haven't worked on the preparedness. So I really look forward to having all this in place, and then we still have a lot of work to do as a result.
Right.
And we'll show the exterior of virtual imaging. Any of those red and yellow spots around the school would be a hot spot that we could go to and look at any time. And as you can see, obviously, you folks all have seen this. This would be, I believe, the front of your school here, or some part of the high school. So now we can take a kind of a pan and tilt around, zoom in, zoom out, take a look at doors, approach routes, anything like that that we may need to take a look at would be important to us as first responders later on in the event if we needed to get into the location or send our people, fire personnel, whoever. It's really nice and really convenient for us to be able to now look and get a first-hand look at what this courtyard looks like when I have to actually go into this courtyard, not having never seen it before. So we think it's a really nice feature. It's between this and the interior, with the interior images and all the interior work that we did here at the Ahern and at Foxborough High School. We think it'd be a tremendous help in the time, like you said, planning for the time to plan for an incident is certainly not when the incident's ongoing. There is no utility shock.
And to echo what you said as far as planning, and one of the biggest things that we did over in Franklin was, is just not just training, but everybody coming together and demystify the whole thing. If a parent has a question, we give the parent the answer. And we've had various parent meetings. We've sat down and we've answered. If they have a question, we answer any and all questions, and we try to tell them why it is we're doing what we're doing. Some parents don't like it. Some parents understand it. Some people have other ways of doing things, and then we explain it to the kids. I mean, we do. Now, over in Franklin, we're kind of regular at lockdowns. We've kind of made it, and to steal a little bit of Jay's thunder, schools for the most part are fireproof. I haven't had a fire in 50 years. On the, the school violence, knock on wood. But the school violence issue, that kind of rears its head, every so often. So we educate the kids. We sit them down. We did, freshmen, and actually we did the junior highs in elementary schools, and we talked to the kids about the lockdowns, what they should do, what they need to do. We talked to the teachers. So we had an assembly with the freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. And one story that I like the most is when we were talking to the kids and we were telling them, this is what you can expect. You can expect the doors to be locked. Your teacher's going to look for you in the hall. Get into a classroom as quickly as possible. Go at this location inside of the school. And a 14-year-old girl, this tells you how, I'm not telling you folks anything you don't know about how on point the kids are nowadays, but she said, what happens if my teacher gets hurt and the door's unlocked? She said, I should probably, we should drag the teacher in here and lock the door and just follow all the prompts. And we're like, yeah, you should. It's exactly what you should do as a 14-year-old girl. And then we've had adults, that have told us, the opposite. I don't really know whether I want to get involved in that. So, that's when you start talking to kids, I can really appreciate it. And they come up, and the first time, it's that apprehension, but we take away the apprehension. Here comes the lockdown. We did it in the middle of class. Nobody got up out of the desks. The door was locked. The police were in the hallway, just kind of checking the locked doors. It was a step-by-step approach. The second time, was, we had all the kids move to a certain area in the classroom, the doors get locked, and now the third time would be that in the change of period, we go ahead and try and do it in the change of period. So it wasn't one of these things that, we want failure. We kind of built them up to be successful at it, and so all the staff and all the administration like, okay, this can kind of work, and then you hit the, a full-scale lockdown till it becomes, it's sad to say, fundamental. One of these things that the kids just have learned over a period of time.
The section you can see up here quickly is the utility section. We went ahead and took shots. It might be difficult to see, but that's a actual picture of the exterior gas meter here in the building, and what we denote where it is, so that should, God forbid, this incident become a prolonged event and we now have to take some sort of other action, we have the ability to now almost have complete control over this building. We know where all the utilities are. We know exactly what we need to do to get all these utilities shut down, controlled, turned off, the electrical panels, and denoted where they are in the building. So we need to shut off the power. We don't have to try to find maintenance personnel who, again, I'd like to throw another plug in there. Mike? Mike was fantastic help. He was tremendous help to us. We certainly couldn't have done it without him. Gave us a lot of insight into the utilities, which was very important to us. We need to know which ones were actually really important and which ones were not necessarily as needed or wouldn't do us a whole lot of good to work on. Able to have access and complete control of the building, from a tactical standpoint, it's very helpful. If you folks needed us to come in and help you, it's nice to know that we do now have almost all the resources outside of, like Chris said in the beginning, where he is and what he's going to do. That's up to him. Everything else, now for Foxborough, between the high school and the Ahern, we have a pretty good grasp. We have a pretty good handle. And everybody, school, the police, the fire department, EMS, all on the same page, so that collectively we can all accomplish the same goal, which is a successful resolution in saving people's lives in the schools, God forbid it ever happens. Everybody's on the same page. Nobody will be working independently, hopefully, and we can get it all done the way we needed to get it done, and shake hands at the end of the day and be thankful that we took the time to do it. Is really where we're at now. So we can continue. I can take it through anything else you'd like to see, or is there any other questions?
I got a couple of questions. Debbie mentioned that there's still a lot of work to do from our standpoint, implement and things. While we're doing that, are we able to get these folks in to look at the elementary schools so that we can do parallel? They've told us what we need to do. They've done lots of basic work here, but now there's some work we need to do. They need to do that same thing at the elementary schools. Hopefully by the time they get done with that, we've done our piece at the middle and the high school, and we can start to implement the different controls we need to at the lower levels.
That would be really helpful because, they're talking about the worst possible incident.
Correct.
But there are many other incidents that could happen that would still require us to evacuate masses of children. So what the work they've done in identifying these other areas, whether they're the rallying points or the staging areas, will be helpful to us, even if it's not a police matter, for example. So they've really done a lot for us that's going to allow us to focus on some other things that we can move on and practice and get into place. So we do definitely need the elementary schools scoped out, if you will, the way they have, because there could be, doesn't have to be an incident of violence, but sometimes it could be something else, like a gas leak or something that we need to evacuate, and we would love their expertise in how we can most efficiently move the kids out to a safe area and go from there.
Well,
That would be very helpful.
it seems almost monthly that there's been a problem at a university or at a high school, and we'd all like to think it'll never happen here or Franklin or Norton or Attleboro. But we really need to be prepared, and I think that as we've talked as a school committee before, part of the reason why we went to the expense of Connect Ed was so that we could notify parents kind of what's going on and keep them from panicking. But in addition to that, we've been pushing over the last 6 to 8 months to accelerate this as quickly as we can and to provide whatever support, financial and otherwise, to make it happen. I think it is important to take it through all of our schools and as quickly as we can be prepared for any kind of crisis that could happen, whether it be, as you say, a gas leak, or it be a student or a parent that has created a problem for the other students. And it isn't just about providing comfort to the parents and the students that we have a plan in place. It's actually testing it on a regular basis and knowing that it works. The best plans in the world don't work if people can't execute them. And so it would be important for us to provide the time and the resources to test all of our schools on a regular basis to the level that people like this think we need to do in order to be ready for any kind of an emergency. And so whatever funding or whatever kinds of support you and Chris need to move this forward, I'm sure the committee will provide that support and issue. Martha?
I think I like the element where we'll be talking with the students and preparing them for something, because I think the students are very intelligent, but they need to know that this is a concentrated effort, that all of you will be here to help and to guide and to make this the easiest for us. But I think the students need to know that help is on the way and where it's coming from. And they need to know that it's a concentrated effort. It's not just the local. We can bring in as much, and for the parents, a comfort level to know that we have a very good plan in place. And I think this committee and this administration is very proactive, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. And I can't thank you enough for coming in here and doing
Even
what
a
you've done.
deterrence.
Absolutely.
If I sit down on that and I decide
Absolutely.
I'm one of the students,
Yeah.
and that's traditionally the population where they come. They come from the student body. They
Well,
know
and you
that
don't
there's a
want
plan
them-
in
you don't want
place. It's
the
not
stand- you know,
not a sitting duck.
I don't want them panicking to the point that they have to realize that help is on the way, and that just, follow what we're telling you to do, and there should be some comfort level for them.
Well,
Whereas,
what you guys have done is, help is on the way, and again, because you kind of adopted this program, the chief bought off on it, they're going to have all the materials to not have the police officers waiting around outside, or what do I do, where's my direction?
Yeah.
They're going to go to one place, and they're going to get dispatched ASAP to get into that building and deal with what they have to deal with. So if nothing, is it foolproof? Absolutely not. There could be a million variables that get thrown into it. But the biggest thing is all of your public safety resources are going to strategic locations to be deployed into the school as quickly as possible. So if nothing else, you've just taken that whole, however long that takes, and again, we've been to these critical incidents. It takes a period of time to get that ball rolling. And, if we've cut down, even 10 minutes by doing something like this, then we think it's a good step.
Now, does this plan also go all the way through to the grief counselors, and when and how we would bring them on site for parents and students and everything?
That's part of our plan.
Right.
We call it what we initially, what it started was, we call it incident stabilization, where our goal is those, like the initial 11 steps here. Our goal is to get this stable enough that as the resources arrive behind us, that they can now deal with this problem. This problem will mitigate very quickly if these steps are followed. If there's a threat or there's an issue in your school based on the training that these guys have had and the equipment now that we have available, we're hoping that we can get in and now mitigate this issue quickly with this little problem inside the school. But after that, then it becomes much broader. Then it becomes now a lot of other people get involved, and that's where you
And
first
that
do
plan has to include all of those items.
It does. Actually, I know the high school's done a lot of work, especially on their plans, which have carried over to some extent to the whole district. We've had our first meeting to talk about it. But there really are 4 things that we need to pay attention to. One is prevention. What are we doing to prevent incidents from happening? We don't have any of that discussed or written down so that we know what we're doing to hopefully prevent any incident from happening. The second one is preparedness, which is what they're helping with. So how do we prepare for any eventuality that may happen, even though we don't want to think it will? And also with the next one, which is response. So they're helping us with a quick, confident response where if we get a call that X school, something, we already know where the kids are being moved to and where we're going to find them. That's really important. And then the last thing you were talking about, the grief counselor, is the 4th phase, which is recovery. And so we need to identify plans for different types of incidents that could potentially happen and what we do. And that's what I said, we have a lot of work to do. It's not necessarily in the response, because I know the high school's been working on that, and other people have, piggybacked on that, and they're helping us tremendously. But we've got to work on all 4 phases as a school district, and that is what takes a long time, and that we're going to get to.
Okay. Kate, do you have comments?
Well, I think one of the things, because of the incident we had last May, and this has been a concern for the school committee, and Larry, I like your idea. We have these gentlemen here, and Chief O'Leary, let's maybe nail them down for our elementary schools. You've been very busy. We're very serious in this. Our children, our students have gotten, staff have gotten very experienced with lockdowns. We had a situation, though, that we realized for the future, we weren't where we needed to be. And we recognize that there are 46 other communities, and we have breathed down the necks of many people asking for updates since last year. And you did an audit. It got expanded from the high school to the Ahern. And if there is a way that we could show our commitment and interest and ask you what would be, how soon could we move towards getting a response set up for our 3 elementary schools?
We'll be careful how we answer that question, but I think that's something we'll probably, we at our last meeting, not to say, I guess, talk out of, that discussion had already been broached, and it's kind of a pay grade above ours. The chief and the superintendent will probably have that discussion, and we'll take care of it. If the work is what you want, we will be there to do the work for you.
Well, above his pay grade says yes. So, we want the work done.
Always get those pay grades.
We don't have much of a pay grade, so we just do what we're told. But from the sounds of it, you'll probably be seeing us again and again to get this all done.
Yeah, we talked about it after the demonstration at the public safety building, and we were just waiting for this in order to really get to the next step. So it looks like, Chief, we're ready to go, so we'll talk about that.
And I think it's important that the school committee, we'll talk about that at some point tonight, I think we need to communicate to the selectmen and the town manager in a very positive way the commitment that the police department has put forth in manpower and resources. There's never enough resources, and everybody's always stretched, and everybody's always complaining about things. I think this is an opportunity that we should proactively pay tribute to the chief and to these folks and to his staff that have worked tirelessly on helping us do this, at the same time asking them to continue working with us to get the other schools done. So maybe Chris and I can draft something on behalf of the committee and send that to the selectmen and the town manager. It is budget season, so the chief probably doesn't mind the letter coming this time of year.
No. The other question, if I may, I'd like to pick your brains, and obviously I think it's really good that this is crisis response, and we're gonna have a plan. Just out of curiosity, when you were involved in the audit for the high school and the Ahern, were there anything else that you could see that we might, and I know you only speak in general terms, but for instance, we've talked about having cameras installed, we've done some work, we've purchased some new communication systems. I'd just like to ask you, did you see anything that you see either may need to be purchased or we may want to consider moving forward, whether it be through crisis response or something else to do with, security?
I think you mentioned the cameras, any type of security features that you can put in are always helpful. But again, things like the camera system is very helpful in the control or being able to watch what's going on. But unfortunately, again, the clientele that we're dealing with has all, I don't want to say unlimited access, but they have a lot of access to what we do. So more importantly, I think you're going down the other road where you have adequate utilities in place, but you actually need to, it's the lockdown procedures and it's the repetitive nature and it's getting everybody into a culture of safety so that camera systems are very helpful and they should be in place. Security features should be in place, but it's the things like you folks talked about. It's the dealing with the problem. It's having a plan. It's now, and Chris talks about it all the time. It's only a theory.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good plan unless it's a good plan, but it's only a theory until you put it in practice.
It's great to have this paperwork, but if it never gets used or it never gets tested, the things might be things you want to change. I guess in this, in your response and in your lockdown procedures, those are the things from a tactical standpoint that we have found to be most helpful. Is having a school that is completely versed in a lockdown procedure, practices those lockdown procedures, and has the tools available to them to now allow us to go in and fix the problem. They've locked themselves down. They've done everything we've asked so that they don't. It doesn't become there are 500 students running down the hallway at us now. They're actually under control, and now we can just deal with the problem at hand. We have found that to be the most helpful tool, and it sounds like you folks have already started to venture down that road. So technology is helpful, and if it's available, certainly you never say no to it, but it's not. It may not cure the problem. It may just be a kind of a Band-Aid for a very serious underlying issue.
What were you going to say, Jim?
It's like a speed bump, you know, the cameras. If someone wants to come to your school, they're going to come into the school. You know, it's not going to stop them, like slow them down a little bit, but they'll get in your school, and the students need the practice the lockdowns, and everyone needs to know what they have to do, and that's where lives are saved that way.
And there's a comfort level in automation, I call it, but they'd be pleased to know before vacation at our meeting, we agreed on the incidents we need to practice in each school.
Excellent.
So we've got that nailed down, and I think at one of our, and we've just, as you know, last month formed a district-wide crisis team. So we're going to invite the kind gentleman from the Foxborough Police Department to come to one of our meetings and take a look at what we're thinking so far and give us some input. So we will be taking advantage of the expertise beyond the Metro-elect procedures. So
it may seem like there's a lot going on, but you guys are well ahead of the curve as far as that goes. We do. Chris has mentioned, as if we do this in a lot of places. We deal with a lot of critical incidents, and it can be very overwhelming. But the steps that you have taken as a committee, it's outstanding as far as the commitment level and where it's starting to go now. You're far ahead. Although I think we've had a conversation where you've come from. You've seen steps in other, but far ahead of a lot of the places that we deal with, and certainly moving in the right direction. So the parents and the rest of the committee can feel pretty secure in the fact that we are at least taking the proactive steps that are needed to make this all work.
And I'll kind of reiterate too that this is the plan that you see. We couldn't do it without a number of people to put it all together. But as far as having resident experts, you've got these two. These two guys are on the team. They've been trained by the same people we get trained with. We go several times a month. The chief has made that commitment to the town of Foxborough. So if you need any questions answered, they live in your community. They police here. They can do it. We just happen to be the techno guys that can kind of throw all this stuff together. But all the other nuts and bolts, they can handle it.
Chief, I know that at times your budget has been scrutinized from top to bottom and left to right. And I know that it's been difficult at times for you to do some of the things that you have felt you needed to do. We are in tight economic times, but I would ask you as the chair of the school committee that if you believe you need training or you need assistance that you can't fund on the municipal side for budgetary reasons, I would ask you to come forward to this committee and have that discussion with us, so that we can either work with the selectmen to get the funding or provide the funding. But what I don't want to experience is that because of budget constraints you had, you weren't able to do some training or some other things that you thought were necessary in order to protect us in the schools the way we needed to be. And I know that on the municipal side, police and fire, there's lots of discussion every year about those budgets. And I know you guys work very tight dollars. So please don't let something go by that you think needs to be done that wasn't funded without coming to the school committee and letting us know so we can work with you.
I certainly appreciate that offer. As chairman of the advisory board is here tonight also, realizes the potential limitations, but we certainly won't have a financial matter to determine the safety of children in Foxborough.
Kate, did you have other comments or questions?
No, I'm very thrilled. This has been a long time in coming. You've been working consistently with us since last spring, and I would just like to add that I think the approach with the administration is absolutely right on. We've gotten very good with our lockdown procedures. I actually learned them from my children, and I was very impressed. It was similar to what you see on TV, LAPD. Yet, when we had an incident, our kids know what to do, but they need to go to the next step, which is, what about that staging area? What about that rally point? And we found out that parents also, with the incident we had last spring, needed to know there had to be a communication system in place. Parents needed to know where to go, so that not only they would be safe, but by them behaving correctly, their children, the students, would remain safe. And I'm thrilled that we have this plan. I'm thrilled that we're going to continue to practice it and share that with staff and practice with students. And we're going to get not just the response piece, but all those 4 components. And I can't thank you for all your hard work, our administrators and the central administration. It's been a great team effort.
Katie?
Agree with Ricky, it's very impressive. Thank you.
All right, well, I'd like to, Pam, would you ask Wendy to pen a note for May, and let's make sure in the May agenda we get a further update on the progress we've made in this area. By then, we should have been able to do more from our side, and maybe by then you folks have done some work at the elementary school, so let's kind of, at least once a quarter, let's get an update on where we stand.
Do you need a consensus, Larry, on where we stand from the school committee wanting to move forward to include the elementary schools, or?
I don't think we need a consensus. I think it's quite clear to the superintendent that he has the support to do that. And I'll ask Chris to draft the letter for the superintendent and school committee, and then he and I can sign that, thanking them for the work that they've done. So, gentlemen, I like your haircuts. I could have looked a little better for you tonight, but you guys have done a great job, and we really appreciate the Foxborough folks and the non-Foxborough folks for all the work that you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is a school committee vacancy for Southeastern Regional Vocational Technical School. Chris, do you want to just kind of walk us through that?
Sure. As I know, the committee knows, and I know that the public is well-versed, long-time school committee member for the Southeastern Regional Vocational Technical School. My former assistant principal at Foxborough High School, Bob Girardin, passed away. Had a terrific long life and a real dedicated member of that school committee. And with that, it has created an opening that we thought would be appropriate for this agenda tonight to just begin a discussion about. This is something that we would share in an opening school committee with the Board of Selectmen.
They've already, I think they've made an announcement asking for those that might be interested. The purpose tonight from our standpoint is also to make the community aware that we're hoping that someone or ones will come forward and put their name forward for a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen and the school committee to nominate someone. But it starts with one or more people putting their names forward for that school committee.
What happens if nobody puts a name forward? Do we do that?
I think one of the things that we should do publicly is maybe even recruit someone who might be interested. Let me just start that a little bit, because I've had a lot of experience with a number of the vocational technical schools in Massachusetts, particularly when I was with the Superintendent's Association. And what I found is the vocational technical schools play an important role in filling a void for students that have strong interests in certain areas and then are able to take part in a specific field and become trained. And I've had experience living in Easton. I know Southeastern Regional pretty well. And they offer terrific programming in a lot of different areas. And I would hope that someone in the community would be interested in that niche, because it is a certain educational niche. And I know that, again, knowing Bob Girardin, he was very interested in students who were going to go on to different careers than what we would be preparing them for here at Foxborough High School. So I would hope that someone in the community, I actually hope there were a number of people in the community who would be interested in really helping out in that. It's a service, obviously. It would be a service to our community. Someone would be interested in, and I would be very interested in having a conversation with anyone. And if someone wants to go over and visit, to see what the school is like, and to kind of get immersed in the culture of Southeastern Regional, I'd be very willing to help out in that, because I think it's, I think it's important that that was just the boys' basketball team, we believe, just won.
Oh, I thought that was a volunteer for the school.
Well, I'll talk to John if he was going to signal so that he would be rock in the first round of the tournament. So. But anyway, I think it's a terrific opportunity for someone in the community to really make a difference. So I hope that people are interested. If you know of anyone, or if you'd be interested, I'm really impartial in this because we interact with the school, but we don't have any supervisory capacity or anything like that. So if there's any conversation or anyone that you know that I could call, or you want me to follow up with a phone call that you make, I think it's an important role, and I hope someone or a number of people step up.
Next item is the 2008-2009 school calendar.
Yeah, let me just, actually using a process that I've used in other communities as a superintendent. And what I've tried to do is, I look at this in some ways very simply, although it does become complicated because of certain dates back and forth. But what I have said in our 2 meetings now that we've had with the school administrators is, I think what we need to try to do is have a good balance between the best 180 days of school that we can have for our students, but also to be able to create some opportunities for our teachers and our professional staff to go through different activities that we feel are important in order for us to continue to improve. So this is, and you can see the large draft stamp is on there for a purpose. I usually do this over a couple of meetings with the school committee. And in between those times, as I said, we've had an opportunity to talk to our administrative team, our principals and directors. We sent this draft to Todd Kaiser and Claudia O'Leary from the Foxborough Education Association. And they actually sent me an email to look at some other dates and some other ideas. Tomorrow I have our monthly what I call parent leaders meeting here, and I'm going to put this on our agenda so that parents can have an opportunity, as school council, PTO presidents, and PTO officers from all around the district. And I also wanted to listen to any ideas, just to give you an overview. The beginning looks very much like, I think, the beginnings in the school district for quite a period of time. We start out with an opening meeting here. That would be on August 27th. And then staff moves into their own schools with department meetings and school-wide meetings. And then we do have another day of professional development. So Wednesday and Thursday, we do a lot of work with our professional staff on the 27th and 28th. And then we start school, we would start school next year on September 2nd. Now, one of the things that we've been looking at is what are the best days for us to have professional development. I'll actually let Debbie chime in a little bit on that, along with when do we schedule early release and conference time for both the elementary level and the middle and high school levels. One of the things that we looked at in terms of the calendar for this coming year is we have, and a change that we've made that we're continuing to talk about, is the idea of having two professional development days before we break for our December break. We've been thinking about doing a 2-day theme around some of the improvement that we want to do in that. So we've really floated this idea with our administrators. They seem to think it was a good idea. Again, I want to hear from the teachers to find out how they think about it. And again, this is a little bit more under the guise of how do we find the best 180 days for students, where those days aren't near the break have traditionally not been the most productive days. Maybe that's the most positive way to say it. Most productive days for our students, just because we're getting near holidays and all of that. So it's an idea that we've been thinking about, that we think has some merit, and we're going to continue to explore.
Chris, I think one of the things that I want to commend you and the team for, we've said that you've been everywhere your first 6 months. There's not a night meeting you haven't been to, or a sporting event, or a music event. Or
I didn't get to that basketball game tonight. I can go Wednesday.
But, you have really made an impact on the community by being visible. And one of the things that I think is important is we had a recent election, and we've had parents that have raised issues about the elections in the school. And a year ago, we made some changes to lock the door to provide additional security so that people couldn't access the main building. We've done some things there to try to address it, but in this program here, we have a national election coming up in November. And I thought it was very proactive of you and your team to give consideration to not having students in school that day. There's going to be such a traffic jam and so many people, so many other things. I think it's a tribute to the proactive approach that you and the team are taking to, security, to listening to what people have to say, to just all that stuff. Not everybody would think through and understand that we've had the issues. So you were at the election, you went there, you saw the building, you had some questions, you had some issues, you had a discussion with the town clerk already. You are preparing some thoughts and ideas for the new town clerk when they start. You've looked at November 11th or whatever it is. What is it? 4th. November 4th for the election. So I think that proactive approach is something that, again, when we're sitting down to do your evaluation, I hope you'll remember that to remind us, because it's that kind of proactive thing that is important. Yeah. And I like the idea that you have floated to potentially do something very different that day, just to make it easier for the voter, easier for the students, and easier for the employees. So.
Yeah, the other thing that we've talked about too is that we generally use, because it's a terrific site, we often use the Ahern for professional development. We won't do that. So it'll be a building that will just be for voting on that day, knowing that it's a big election.
Right.
So, yeah, thank you for raising.
No, but it's very proactive.
Debbie, any ideas on anything about professional development that you want?
No, I think some of them are, kind of easy because they're typically where we tend to have them. We always have one toward the beginning of the school year, so the October one makes sense. Election day makes perfect sense. I think our controversial ones we'll have to keep talking about are those 2 December days, because we like to bulk them together, but it also means we front-loaded everything before. All the professional development will occur before the winter break. So there's a lot of considerations to be had, and a lot of us like that idea. But whether, we've heard from a few people already, and there may be better alternatives, so I think.
Well, that's the other thing. You've reached out to the union, you've reached out to administrators, you've reached out to everybody that would be impacted, like we talked earlier with these parents. Getting everybody's input, evaluating it, and then making a decision. And while it may not make everybody happy, it's that outward communication, that listening to what people have to say, having the two-way dialogue, and then making the decision that's pretty important.
Just a quick question, are the 5 through 12 conference early release days normally taken together? I can't.
Yes.
Are they are?
I think
okay.
they are.
This year they were? Okay.
I don't know.
Kate, do you know?
I think yes.
We can,
they are, yeah.
Yeah, they usually are.
They are, okay.
so anyway, that's where we are with the calendar right now. We're going to continue, but if you have any ideas,
I think it's great.
anything that you want to add to it, certainly let us know.
Well, and I think it's nice that we're getting it, we're going to have some time to kind of look it over, and you're going to come back after speaking to more people, and you don't have to echo what Larry says. I think it's great, how proactive you're being, and especially with the election day, too.
And if I may, Dr. Martis, I'd just like to throw out one question.
Sure.
Since you're going to come back to us, and again, Larry, he asked us ahead of time. He told us last meeting. He's done this. He's talked to everyone. So you're absolutely right at being proactive. A question we often get of parents, and I think it'd just be a great time to have you communicate for us, is how come we don't start the school year until after Labor Day? Now, it's always an issue with the unions and with their, per the contract, but the contract's also up this year. I would love to get your thoughts on it, and I'm sure the parents out there, one of the things that they always ask is, because they ask us, why can't we start ahead of time? So I think in 5 years I've developed a pretty good answer, but I'd sure like to hear yours.
I've actually always started before Labor Day, and one of the things that, my first year as a superintendent actually in Medfield, they had a contract provision that didn't allow that. And we had, it was 95, 96, and we had a tremendous number of snowstorms. So we were worried that we were going to either take some of the April vacation, or we were going to look at a couple of Saturdays, or whatever. So it actually made it easier so we opened the contract up. We were in, similar to where we are here, we were beginning negotiations. And we said we would do what we do with this, and that is have input from everyone and have those discussions. What I've done in other districts, and I think we also did this in Framingham, is we would typically have the staff development days in next year, if we did it, on the 25th and 26th, and then bring students in on the 27th and 28th. In Framingham, they also would do the 29th. In Medfield, they wouldn't, because they would have a longer Labor Day weekend. So that's open for discussion. But one of the things that we found that was positive is, one, you get those extra couple of days, so you're starting a little bit early. The second piece is that a lot of the routines for the first couple of days, getting students into new classrooms and schedules, and all of those routines, and the pile of paperwork that we ask all of you to fill out, we usually can take care of that in the first couple of days. Then we get started right away after Labor Day, so everyone's ready. So there really are two schools of thought. There are other districts that would never start. You probably could never get a school district on Cape Cod to start before Labor Day because of the employment issues and the importance of Labor Day for that economy. So there are different, as you can see, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this. I don't know why, but I have.
The other thing, Chris, even if we were to contemplate something like that, people have their vacations planned well in
you'd have
advance.
to do it another year.
And you have to do it at least 1 or 2 years out, because people have already booked that week for August of '08, and maybe even for August of '09, you don't know, so we have to give some lead time.
And
so we
while it
change that.
seems all those reasons are really good ones, but and I'm sure you've heard from the people right now who say, why don't we start before Labor Day? But if we set a calendar where they did, you'd hear from the other half of the crowd. Because one of the disadvantages is if we do the professional development day on the 25th, 26th, then kids come in the 27th, 28th of August, teachers want to get in their classroom and get ready. We've tied them up for 2 full days before they come in. So that's not always a great situation. And there are a lot of families that really don't want to send their kids back until after because of vacation. So if you do it one way, you're going to hear from one voice, and if you do it the other way, you'll hear from the other voices. So I think there is no perfect way. We've all experienced all of them, and I think we just have to go with what we think is best. I'm just glad we get 2 of the professional days in, because when we look at our whole calendar, we're not just looking at 180 student days. So I think it's great that we're able to get a couple of our days in, even without students. It's a good thing.
No, I don't have a preference. I just think it's good that we have the
It's good to
discussion.
have a discussion.
And as you look at that, there are many parents who, and you're right, it's done a year in advance. But the other question we're always asked is why February and April? And could you ever, you'll find as many people want that as vacation time, certainly our students do, but you'll find there are many parents that say, gee, could we do something a little different? And that might free up or impact the calendar. So I just throw
Well,
it
they'd
out there.
certainly save money if we changed the February and April vacation to something in the middle, because that's when places charge the premiums, because everyone's out there. So
if it's on the table for a year out, let's put both of those things on to take a look at. Thank you.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the last formal item on the agenda, which is the monthly budget statement. And again, and there will be, Chris, I promise you there'll be evenings that the school committee is probably not as nice to you and Paul as it seems like we've been tonight. Again, in an effort to be proactive, we've talked as a committee about every month about the budget report. And we talk every month proactively about how we keep on top of this. And we've been talking about the changes and the additional money that's been incurred this year in special education. And we've talked about some of the coverage in the newspaper and the headlines and those kinds of things. So what Paul did tonight, I'd like to ask him to start with this, he actually did an analysis so we could proactively share with the community why is special needs running over budget? What's driving it? How many new students moved in versus how many students moved out versus programmatic changes, et cetera. And I know there's copies for the audience as well, so they can follow along. But maybe, Paul, you or Chris might start with that, because I think it's a very proactive way of sharing with the community that this isn't about mismanagement and it isn't about incompetence. It's about students that have needs that we didn't know about when the budget was finalized. And it's not that different than most communities in the Hockomock as well as across Massachusetts are experiencing. So I'll ask Chris or Paul to start with that piece before we get into the budget overview.
Okay, I'll start and then I'll throw it over to Paul, because it's something that we've been talking about, obviously, over the last few months. And I think it really is important to reiterate what you just said, Larry, and that is that across the state, I talk to my colleagues about this frequently, it is what we call a volatile, because you really can't, it's difficult to predict. And there are really two schools of thought about this, from my budgeting and from Paul's discussion, even today, this afternoon. And you can try to project numbers of students. When you do that, you're taking money that you don't know if you'll spend or not, because you don't know what that prediction would be, which means you're going to make some choices and make some reductions in other areas early, not knowing whether you're going. I think what this district has done, which I think is the right way to approach it, is to be prudent about it and say, at some point in time when we create the budget, these are the numbers of students that we have. And I think over the course of history in Foxborough and in other places, that there are some years when this changes and you have difficulties. And there are other years when it changes and you don't. And it's just the nature of the in and out flow of students and the needs that change. We had a good discussion about, identifying students early in early childhood education and making sure that we have a better idea of what's going on. But so from our discussion, Paul did a terrific job today of really analyzing this, working with our special education department and really analyzing this. So Paul, I'll throw it over to you and you can just walk us through
Thank you.
the detail.
Just before I do that, I would like to point out that the budget statement that was included in the packet, the numbers have changed for special education from last Thursday to today. And so, which I'll talk about with that,
it's like snowplow.
that statement. But we took a look at what were the drivers in terms of our out-of-district placements and tried to figure out a way to quantify it. And this is the way that I came up with. So that we had one student that was an actual move-in to town that obviously was not budgeted, cost us $33,989. We had 12 existing students in the Foxborough Public Schools that were not budgeted, that were educationally taken care of within the district, that are now out of district. So there was no budget money established for those 12 students. That cost us $347,000. We had 4 students that we had budgeted that moved out of the district. That saved us $114,000. We also had 7 students that programmatically their schooling changed. Now that could have been a change from one school to another. It could have been a change within an existing program. All out of the district students saved us $75,000. We had 12 students that we had rate variations, and what I call rate variation is that we budgeted one number and then the actual number came in. So over the 12 students, we were off with those 12 by $4,296. We had one student that left the country and now has returned. And that student that left the country we did not budget for next year as a side issue. So that over what we originally budgeted for that student, we saved $16,000. So the net change on the what I'm going to call the annual typical school year programs, we're showing a deficit right now of $179,000. In addition, we have summer programs. We start the budgeting process October, November. It isn't until the following April for this year, so the budget was voted on by the town last May. It isn't until, for FY08, it isn't until April, the spring of '08, when a lot of the programs, or the students have been identified as to summer programs they'll take, so that we're really way out in terms of the projection. So for this past summer, which would hit our FY08 budget, we had 6 students that participated in a summer program that we had not budgeted. And then we had 7 students that we did budget that participated in programs, and we had rate variations of $1,800 on those students. So the net change on the summer programs was a negative $26,000, which brings right now our projected deficit in the special education out-of-district tuitions to $205,663. On the budget statement that I passed out last Thursday, we were projecting a $194,109 projected deficit. Now, the special education director and I have had several discussions, and she doesn't quite look at it as a deficit, and my attitude is, well, from dollars and cents, it's a deficit. We were very emphatic last year as we built the budget for FY08 that we would only budget students that we really knew and were solid. And in the event we did get into a situation where we had additional students that drove the tuition account into the red, that we knew we had a couple of revolving accounts, the circuit breaker account and the tuition revolving account, that could provide us with funds to bail out the program. Now, I would like to point out that the previous year, FY07, we actually ran a surplus in the tuition out-of-district account of $55,672. So that was money that we originally budgeted in the special ed department, which, with a limited amount of money, that meant that there were other areas of the budget that could have used the $55,000 that didn't. And so we had a surplus last year. We were very aggressive in terms of how we budgeted for the out-of-district students this year, and it broke the other way, so we're short $200,000. If we did not have funds available in those revolving accounts, and as the balances in those accounts are starting to diminish, I would not be quite as aggressive in the future with budgeting and would back off the stance that we took for FY08. But this is where we stand right now for tuitions. It shows you the volatility of the programs and students, and this is the largest single driver of our deficit right now.
Paul, if you look at your first 3 lines, move in, new placements, and move outs, which is where most of the variance is, you look there, and every student is $25,000 to $30,000 roughly. So when if you look there on the new student that moved in was $34,000. You take the 12 new placements into 347, you get 29,000 and change, and the move outs are in the 27,000 range. So just so that the public recognizes, for these students, we're spending $25,000 to $30,000 per student. So when you have a small number of unplanned students, that becomes a significant number pretty quickly. Now, in our regular education, Chris, we're spending $7,500 per student. Right. And so if we have a mistake with a student, a regular student, it's 1/4 to 1/5 a special needs situation. And so it doesn't take, as you see here, 1 move-in, 12 new placements is 13, minus 4 move-outs is 9, for a net of 9 students to have an impact of almost $200,000. So that's the difficult situation, and part of our responsibility is to educate and communicate to the public what's driving this account and how it's being driven. And again, it's not a matter of mismanagement. It's not a matter of budgeting error. There are 12 new placements and a move-in, 13, 4 move-outs, so it's a net addition of 9 students with special education needs, and those special education needs in those cases ran $25,000 to $30,000 a student.
They're unexpected expenses.
And there's no alternative. You must provide the quality education for those students. Go ahead, Chris.
I think one of the things, though, that I know we've been talking about, because we've been thinking about this issue for months now, is we're really looking, I know Paul's doing a really good job of looking at all of our other accounts. So this is the time of the year when we really make sure that any spending is closely monitored, so we're hoping that we're going to be able to recover some of that deficit as we move through the last quarter of fiscal year. And I think that's just important for the public to understand, that that's really typical, again, something that every district is facing, most every district is facing, and something that we'll continue to do. So I know Paul's looking at our energy accounts and some of the spending in other areas that we'll be, again, closely monitoring I know that we had some changes in some of our teachers taking leaves at different times during the year has cost us a little bit more. Last month, we had really brought down quite a bit of our personnel side deficit with a couple of retirements and some other shifts in personnel. And those things can, again, change a little bit as well. So, my hope is that next month when we report out again, that we're talking about, okay, what are some of those areas that we're going to be able to reduce that. At the same time, as Paul mentioned earlier, we are in a good position financially because we have money in both the tuition account and then also in the special education circuit breaker account. So we know that we'll be able to handle this. At the same time, it does give us pause about what direction is this going? Is there a trend that we should be anticipating? As Paul mentioned, he's already put in our FY09 budget the outside cost of what we were looking at 2 months ago. So that's already built into that budget, and I think it's prudent, given our experience this year, that we make sure that continues to stay in that budget.
Well, again, Chris and I talked this afternoon about the need not to freeze spending for the rest of the year, but to take a very hard look at all discretionary spending. And until we get a better handle on some of the utility, it's been a warm month, and as we continue to work through, the idea is to take the least amount of money out of the revolving account to cover the deficit as possible. And so they will be taking a very hard look at all discretionary expenses going forward and deciding whether or not, with the financial situation, it's prudent to spend that money now, or it would be prudent to wait. And they'll be looking at that closely as a management team and making that decision. So I don't want someone to think that we're not going to spend money that's necessary to be spent. But on the other hand, there's some things that could be postponed, and they'll be looking at whether or not they do that. That's not dealing with security or safety or any of those other things, but I do want the public to know that there is a real effort going on to scrutinize purchase orders going forward between now and the end of the year on this. And that's, to me, what's been helpful with this new system that's in, which allows Paul to report to us every single month on the accounts. It gives all of us a chance to see what's going on and how it's going on and what's left in some of these accounts. And it allows him and the department heads to have a good dialogue on what's remaining in the rest of the year and what's probably going to get used, what might not get used, how we might be able to use some of that to cover it. And it allows some real financial planning and forecasting that we haven't had in the past. And I think that's a real positive.
I think it's important to have this discussion too, Larry, for the people at home.
Yeah.
So.
I don't know, Paul, that there's a need to go through your budget summary in detail. Everyone's had a chance to read it. I'll ask the committee if they have questions for you specifically on that. And if not, I'll accept the motion to approve his report for the month. But questions or comments? All right, do I have a motion to approve Paul's report? I have a motion by Katie, second by Martha. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you.
We have minutes to do before other matters. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, let me just as something else that Paul has shared. As this committee knows, we have a capital improvement meeting on Saturday. And we just received the packet today. Saturday, March 1st, Selectmen's Meeting Room, and there's a schedule for the school department is scheduled at 9:30.
And just to be safe, I've asked Chris to post the meeting, so in case school committee members wish to come, there's no question about whether or not it is a legal or illegal meeting. And so it will be posted, so if school committee members want to attend. Generally, the business manager and the chairman do the presentation. The superintendent is sitting up on he's part of the capital committee. But
I'm analyzing these closely.
But in the event that any school committee member would want to come, I thought we would post it to be on the safe side.
Thank you, Larry.
So Chris is in the process of doing that.
And everyone has a schedule, and Paul has put together some narrative on our capital requests that we talked about last meeting. So I think we're in good shape for that meeting right now.
Okay, there are...
Larry, can I just ask a question? Some years we have come because the chair felt it was important for all of us to come. Other years, no, just... What, do you have a preference,
No.
you and Bev?
I
Do you
have no
think it's
preference.
helpful that we come, or it doesn't make a difference?
I don't know that it makes a difference, but if you have an interest, I don't want to discourage it.
I'm very happy to let you do what you're doing for us.
So, there are two sets of minutes. In our package was the set for February 11th. If you recall, at the last meeting, we did not approve the meeting minutes from January. Kate had some feedback that she wanted to provide. And with Wendy out, they weren't able to coordinate that and make that change. So that's why in your package you only have February 11th. So I'd first of all like to take the February 11th minutes, and do I have a motion to approve the February 11th minutes? Motion by Kate. Second by Martha. Discussion, corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Kate, do you want to give us an update on those other minutes?
Yes, Wendy had pretty much made corrections to those other items, and my one question was on page 2. This is for the January 28th meeting. And I'd like the last sentence changed. Currently it read, Ms. Kaminsky noted that the previous Terra Nova results served a purpose and should be kept and used, even though the system will not use Terra Nova in the future. I did get a chance to check. I'd like it to be a little clearer than that. I had said specifically about, we'd use that for curriculum decisions and in the strategic plan, and I would like that noted as such. So if you concur, I'd like to suggest that the sentence read, Mrs. Kaminsky noted that the previous Terra Nova results were used to make curriculum decisions and are referenced in our strategic plan, and that this information is an asset of the school system that should be retained.
So I'll have you give those to Pam. Pam will give those to Wendy. We'll get that typed up, and then we'll approve them once we have the set in front of us for the next meeting. Okay? Other matters. Chris, would you like to start?
Sure. Just a couple of things. We just announced that the boys basketball team won. They play Wednesday now. At least I'm assuming.
You definitely did, right?
Well, I'm assuming.
The thumbs up is usually a good sign.
On the spot, right?
Okay.
Our hockey team in their last game made the tournament. They play tomorrow night against Hopkinton High School in Marlborough, hockey rink in Marlborough. And the girls basketball team plays Whitman Hanson on Thursday night. So a very strong winter season, and we wish all of those teams well. And I think Bert Delaney told me our track program was competing this afternoon, so maybe we'll have an update on how they did. They had something postponed because of the weather over the weekend.
Excellent.
So, yeah,
Okay.
so good news.
Katie?
Just piggybacking on that, the cheerleading squad are moving on to regionals next weekend. And the other item I wanted to bring up was at the last meeting, I recused myself from the vote regarding overnight travel for the cheerleading squad. And I did speak with Jim Hardy from Mask, and I didn't need to. I had actually voted on the whole list back in the springtime of all the overnight travels. There wasn't any kind of I'm going to use the phrase, competition with that particular overnight travel and any other overnight travel that we were trying to decide between, which at that point, it wasn't a funding issue as well. So I just wanted to make note of that for the record.
Okay, excellent.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Kate?
I'm all set.
Martha?
I'm all set.
Just one item, and I'll make it quick, but Paul, Chris, and I had a second meeting with Jim Thrasher, Andy, and Randy. Unfortunately, the representative from the advisory committee was not able to make it that evening. But we did set forth a plan. I've given you each a copy of that tonight, just to give you an update. But just for the public standpoint, while we had hoped to maybe have a 5-year plan before town meeting, Randy is so tied up with the new accounting system and all the things that go with that, that it's going to be difficult for him to find the time to do that before town meeting. So we set a goal to have a 5-year plan done by the fall, before we start the budget season for the next fiscal year. And what we will be doing between now and then is we will be going through every single revenue account, just like we did with the revolving accounts, and we'll be understanding as a group what is the nature of the account, what drives the account, how do they determine what the revenue projection should be, maybe how conservative or how optimistic they are. And we're going to try to put a presentation together in simple, non-financial language that would help anyone from the public or the two boards fully understand the revenue picture and how that works and how conservative or optimistic we are. The goal is that for too often, the numbers are Randy's. And we agreed that the revenue numbers should be jointly agreed to by the school committee, the board of selectmen, and the advisory committee. And they ought to be our numbers, of which Randy is a critical person in implementing them. But too often, we've kind of delegated that to him and then sometimes taken shots that we thought the numbers were too low or not. So this way here, in the 5-year plan, there would be a document that would fully explain and simple with how each of the accounts work and where there may be money or not money or where the number might be coming together. In addition to that, we would work with a 5-year expense side that we would propose as well. And so we'll be coming back to the full school committee and the board of selectmen with updates. We also felt that too often the benefit package, which has become very expensive, for instance, 10% of the town's revenue is now consumed in health care. And we felt that if we asked the average school committee member to explain the health plan and how it works, or the average selectman how it works, it would probably be difficult. And so with the pension plan, with the health care plan, we're going to be recommending an executive session for the selectmen and the school committee, whereby management can give us an overview of how those plans work, what is working well with those plans, what is not working well with those plans, and allow us to strategize how, as we go forward in future union negotiations, we might look to restructure health care or restructure pension or do some things differently. And while we can't discuss that strategy in open, we thought it was important for every member of both boards to fully understand what we'll call the benefit side of our expenses and what's driving them. So for instance, in the latest financial numbers, because we have an unfunded pension liability, we've been asked to fund an additional $200,000 into that account. But for us to explain as members or the school or the selectmen, to explain to the average citizen why are we underfunded, why do we need to put 200, why not 300, why not 100, and how all that works is beyond most of us. And in the 2 years that I've been on the board, there's never been a presentation on some of that stuff. So we thought it would be helpful to try to present information on the benefit side of things because they're becoming so expensive, along with some ideas and strategies that the two boards could think about. Because what we do for police and fire or what we do for schools, it's all interrelated. And so we really have to work jointly in that respect. So I think that if you agree, we're going to continue working as a smaller group and then reporting back to the two groups on a regular basis. And we think Number one, it'll provide greater information for all 10 members of the two boards, as well as maybe the advisory members. It will provide us an opportunity to communicate more and better with the public. It'll allow us to strategize. And finally, it'll allow us to own the numbers and be comfortable that the revenue numbers are what we think they are. You know, if you remember, there was criticism a few years ago when we started talking about the revolving accounts and how much money was in there, and why weren't we using those, et cetera. Well, there's some criticism floating around relative to how some of these revenue estimates get arrived at. So this would eliminate all of that. It would bring it all out in the open and a full discussion. And Randy was very enthusiastic about the fact that these numbers would now become owned by the three boards and not just him. And that he thought that would be a good step forward in our financial planning, our financial forecasting, and that if we were to do a presentation to bond people, for instance, wouldn't it be interesting to have the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, the chairman of the school committee, the chairman of the advisory committee, as well as the town folks talking about the community and the financial controls and the financial planning and how we're strategizing around some of these expenses like healthcare that is rising at 16% a year. So we think it'll do a lot to enhance the overall financial condition of the town, and I just can't thank Randy enough. He's done a tremendous amount of work already. But what we're going to need to go forward is going to need more of his time, and we just can't put a lot of that in over the next few months. So if the committee is willing, we will do it over the next 6 months, but before the next budget year starts.
I think probably one of the most important things we have to deal with, and I don't know how to go about it or how we can do it with both the town and the school side. Working in healthcare, I think it's time to take a real evaluation of our healthcare and what we're paying. You know, there's a lot of people who move from a family plan, whose children are gone, who maybe we don't put them on a 1+1, which will save you $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year. We need to look at higher co-pays. We need to probably do some research or send out a questionnaire. How much do you use your insurance? You know, $5 co-pays look wonderful, but if you only go once a year, it's a $5 copay, and you're paying probably over $1,000 more for that policy per month per premium.
Of which the town's paying 75 and you're paying 25.
So I think it's time. I really would love to be on that type of a committee, seeing it from the healthcare side and what comes into an office and what goes into this. It would be a huge eye-opener to this town to see how much money you really could save. Ironically enough, sometimes if you deal with Blue Cross Blue Shield or your health care providers on an individual basis, you will get a lower premium than if we have lock, stock, and barrel, because they look at it and they gear it towards the person. You know, a 30-year-old versus a 60-year-old, there's a huge difference in what you need to pay. These are all things that we need to take a look at. We cannot continue on the road we're on. It's overwhelming. We'll wind up cutting people on both sides because of healthcare costs. It's not necessary. There just has to be a better practice in place. There has to be more creativity in place, and we need to take a look at this. We can't sit on it anymore.
No,
on
and
either
actually,
side.
Chris is working with Andy and a consultant the town has. What I've suggested to Chris is that he needs to determine in his mind the effectiveness of the consultant that the town has been using. And my view is, since we pay the lion's share of that because of our employees, if we feel as a school committee that we needed some additional firepower to do analysis or to look at alternatives, then Chris should come back to this committee and ask for some additional resources to do that. And that's why I've asked him and Andy to schedule a meeting, a joint meeting, an executive session with the school committee and the selectmen to walk us through and allow us to have a healthy dialogue so we understand the various plans, what are the costs of those plans, et cetera.
Well, it's not just the consultant, Larry. It's the person who's selling you that.
Correct.
Those are the ones we need to get in here, because an overall consultant is going to give you this broad base, whereas if you have the providers come in and lay out all the different options, all the different co-pays, all the different styles, you'll be astounded at how much money we can
But if you
save.
have the right consultant, Martha, which most companies have, they know that. We need to make sure, and I'm not saying we don't, but we need to make sure that we're spending the right amount of money to manage those accounts properly. And so Chris is stepped forward in a way that prior superintendents haven't, to engage himself in that dialogue. And I would expect within the next, would you say, 4 to 6 weeks, there'll be a meeting scheduled with the selectmen in executive session whereby we can have a very robust discussion where those that have health experience or financial experience or HR experience can really talk through from their own perspectives, but more importantly, we can understand what are the various plans, how much we pay for each of those plans, what is the strategy behind those, and what might we do differently to provide good, solid health care for our employees at a more affordable cost for them and for us. And we can't do that in a public session.
But it's no, you can't, but it's also time to put a survey out, and how much do you use it, what do you personally expect from the healthcare program, and what are your needs? I mean, for a person, when you look at the guidelines, a person needs to go every 2 or 3 years for a physical. Well, a $5 copay for a year that doesn't exist doesn't make sense anymore. So if you're going to save $1,000 a month by going to a $20 copay that you're only going to use every second or third year, that makes much more sense.
You mean $1,000 a year?
No, $1,000 a month.
Savings.
Savings.
You won't get $1,000 a month savings by just changing the copays. Because some of our most expensive plan, Paul, is about $13,000 per year.
I believe so.
So
well,
we're paying, our most expensive plan is about $1,000 a month. But that said, there are substantial savings to be potentially gained, and that's why my view is the school committee has to stand up and take a very much more proactive approach than we have in the past. And I think once you see each of the members, you get to see the plans, you get to see the cost of those plans, how many folks are in each of those plans, what the actuarial assumption was that set the price and what the actual stuff is. I think it's very good information for committee members on both sides so that we can understand and provide better direction to the superintendent and the town manager as to how we might want to restructure some of those plans or look at things differently. And part of that, obviously, is including the employees in that dialogue and that discussion. But it's important for us to think strategically first before we start to have that discussion, and then to have the superintendent and the town manager having those discussions with our employees to see how flexible they can be and how well we can share with them ways that they can save money without sacrificing the quality of their coverage. So,
one of the things that I think you're to be congratulated, Dr. Bartis and Larry, what we do when we have this meeting, it will take us 2 budget cycles, but you're absolutely right, we have the largest number of employees. Right. So to start this now, when we were at Mask, and Martha, I applaud you. I've heard you for 5 years talk about this, and every time it was to advisory or whatnot, it was growing. We had 13% a year increases, but we couldn't do anything. But perhaps by taking the leadership role, and one of the things that they showed us at Mask this year was that they had, you look at who are the consultants. It's Mercer, it's Hewitt. Yeah. They actually had a consultant. Right. They showed exactly what you're trying to convey. If you leave your copay for prescriptions at $5, guess what? It's not only costing you money, it's taking money out of your pocket. That's because right. You're not getting some surgical procedures that this pool really needs to have. Mm-hmm. So, I think by taking a look at that, if we need to take a leadership role, I can't tell you, I would like to make sure we have the right consultant in place. Correct. Given, or else this is never going to happen, or the savings will never materialize. Right. And once we do that, it's with the right communication plan, because if people realize, you only have 2 pockets, and what comes out of one is, it means there's something less for the other, then I think it will take us through the budget cycles and the negotiated contract cycles that we would need to actually do a better job taking care of our employees than just biting the bullet. And you know what? They're losing coverage every year.
Right. That's
right. Why they maintain a copay that may not be working for them. So I think that's very good.
All right, so Chris will be setting that up in the next 4 to 6 weeks. He's been meeting with the consultant. Paul's met with the consultant. They've got another meeting, I think, coming up.
This Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay. So that will allow them to then figure out what the timing would be, give them some time to put a presentation together, and then update all of us. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Martha, second by Kate. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 4-0. Meeting is adjourned at